my next question is about landlord friendly versus tenant friendly. Both, I would say, Pennsylvania is a blue state. New Jersey is one of the bluer states. How do you guys approach tenant landlord rules being in a somewhat blue state? I know Allentown is probably a little bit more in the middle, but just wanted your take on, because that's a big hindrance. You talk to anybody who's an investor in New Jersey and they want to stay local, especially New York. New York, I don't even want to touch, but New Jersey and Pennsylvania, how do you guys deal with tenant landlord rules? How have you guys found it in terms of evicting someone in the mobile home park space, stuff like that? So I think, Jared, you answered the last question first. Fabio, why don't you do this one first?
Yeah, my recommendation here is just make sure you have an awesome attorney who is an expert in your specified area of real estate. So we have our attorneys on the board of the New Jersey Manufactured Housing Association, and she's a rock star. And then part of that is also just aligning our expectations. I mean, know that this is not Texas. You're not going to get a tenant out in 30 days. Could take 6 months, could take 18 months, but eventually you'll get them out. Just is what it is.
Jared, what about you?
That's a good point, Fabio. Yeah, no matter what state you're in, probably consider joining the State Association for Manufactured Housing. Just a wealth of knowledge. I think Pennsylvania, politically, it's considered purple, gone red and blue. I think actually, I would argue that Pennsylvania is also is tenant fair, landlord fair. There are states that make Pennsylvania look landlord friendly. Yeah, maybe compared to New York. There's some states that make it look tenant friendly. So a huge thing in Pennsylvania, for example, we can't end somebody's lease. We just can't pick up and end a tenant's lease. There are many states where you can do that. And we need them to not pay or to not follow, to break the rules twice within 6 months. I think that's fair, actually, because there is a huge expense to the tenant if the landlord could whimsically end their lease. And so I know that I saw the questions that are coming up. You sent them out a little bit ago. And part of my management philosophy is you should be treating people how you want to be treated. And maybe sounds cliche, but if you're not trying to shortcut and you're not in a rush, then it really shouldn't be a problem long-term. If you have a long-term focus, it shouldn't be a problem. In fact, again, it probably helps because a lot of the states you mentioned where there's a lot of startup funds and boot campers who have exploded, they're going to places where it's sort of the Wild West in favor of the landlord. So you've got that competition. There's other examples where it actually, I'd say, helps if you're looking for long-term stability. The cost to install a home in Pennsylvania and a lot of the northern states, but in Pennsylvania, for example, at this point, a single wide is $15,000. I mean, it sort of depends on what you're counting in that installation. But what that stops is the tenant stealing game. So this is some regulations that are heavy duty. It's not the Wild West. It's not the freest of markets, so to say. But I've talked personally to operators who are in wars paying tenants thousands of dollars to move their home because there's no real moving cost to speak of. And to me, that's not good for a long-term business. I don't want to operate in that. I don't think if you're looking for stability and passive income, you want to operate in that. So I don't have any problems with some of these tenant protections.
So just to add on to that, so I do think Pennsylvania is like, we have a property in Pennsylvania, and as long as you're outside of Philadelphia, because Philadelphia is very, very tenant friendly. But once you get outside of Philadelphia, usually it becomes actually surprisingly very, very tenant, I would say landlord, I would say fair. It's not like I think in our property in Oxford, we're evicting people. It probably takes like 3 weeks. It's not like in Texas where you could go in and steal their flat screen TV if they're not paying for it. So I think it's definitely fair. But I think you hit on a really good point, is that sometimes these regulations, if you understand them, you could actually gain them to become a competitive edge. And I think this is something, I know we're supposed to be talking about mobile home parks, but this is something me and Fabio are coming across with the short-term rental space, where the town that we are operating in are looking to pass ordinances And we are just looking to manage those ordinances. And as long as they pass after we're in there, we could use that as a competitive advantage, because now you're not going to get a wave of more short-term rentals there. So that's actually like perfect for us. So you could almost use it if you understand it, and if you're not being passive about what regulations are being passed, and have a voice and make sure that you are, making sure that your voice is out there, then you could really, really use it as a competitive advantage. The second point that I want to hit on with what you said is, when you're dealing with getting a deal from a broker, and then they're showing you the pro forma, and they're showing you year one an aggressive rent bump, and you are turning around and you the LP investor or the potential buyer of that park, you actually have to evaluate how tenant landlord rules are going to affect that 1 year magical bump up. Because a broker is not going to explain to you how difficult it is to evict someone in that place, or even if it's possible to evict someone, because Jared was describing good cause evictions, where basically someone has to do something wrong. So that also means you can't just bump up their rent to a certain extent or whatever it is. So understanding the rent regulations in the area that you're getting these offerings, because 9 out of 10 times the brokers will, I don't want to say use the word mislead, but they will make it seem a lot easier to execute a business plan where tenant turnover is involved. Let's just put it that way. And I think understanding that is a critical part as an investor, and that's on the investor. It's not on anybody else. And if you're getting pitched a deal on a different JV, or someone else is bringing you a deal, it is the investor's job to understand some of that. And that's where it does help, where if you're a New Jersey investor, the fact that you understand, and you might have a couple of single family rentals, you'll kind of understand, wait, something is wrong. It's not that easy to evict in New Jersey, and you're expecting complete tenant turnover in year one. So I think that's a really, really critical point that I wanted to make, coming from what you guys are mentioning. You guys want to jump on that, or?
All right. Yeah, I think it adds to there's kind of a pro and a con, and I think that's it. What you're hitting on. There's a pro and a con. You got to choose. Do you like this game? Because you get some protections from it as well.